Nothing like having a few side quests, both as a bridge officer on the flagship of the Federation and as podcasters here on Visual Please, a vile visit to Bajor. My name is Joseph.
Hey, don't mind me. I'm just over here openly threatening to murder people on the promenade. I'm your co-host, Peter. This thing that was just screeching in your ear, is that the first time people are hearing this, or did you get one on before?
Oh, yes. So, yeah, this would have been the second episode they listened to it by now, actually. So this would have shown up last week, but I guess we're talking about it because it was just created. But we finally got our hands on a proper DS9 intro. So this was somebody that you contacted, right, Peter?
Yeah, I had to go through some work networks to get this. Honest to God, I tried. I had my wife's old FARC friend who is a Detroit middle school music teacher.
Sounds like exactly who we're looking for.
Well, that's what I thought, but this wasn't her. She wouldn't do it, but she translated the music over into like a scale that the recorder can play. Because apparently you can't just take piano music and play it on recorders. I don't know shit about music, so I'm sure I'm saying real dumb stuff right now, some real 101 stuff. But you can't do it. And I tried playing this fucking thing, and after 10 minutes of trying real hard, I made a spreadsheet with the fingerings because I couldn't read the notes. Miserable, big waste of time. I was much happier playing Cyberpunk after I stopped and said, fuck it. I'm going to outsource this bitch. Music is hard and it is not for me. So yeah, I had a work friend end up lining that up for us. And there it is, blaring in your ear. So be careful how high you have that turned up in the car, because I don't think your speakers are going to like it. But hey, it's true to heinous recorder productions.
Listen, we have a vibe and we needed to match it. It's not that we didn't enjoy using Ian's Mirror Universe. It's just that, you know, that's got a specific use. Good. It's too good for these purposes. We need to get back to first principles, as they say, and that means a real crappy recorder version of the theme to start this show. Gosh darn it.
Yeah, that's our vibe. Shrill and abrasive.
I was going to say, speaking of shrill and abrasive, but that really doesn't apply to anything. No,
you're still in enterprise mode.
Yeah, we watch.
Speaking of which, too, also, I mean, we're 16 episodes into the 6th season. This should be our 10th episode of Deep Space Nine. A lot of new people coming on board with us. Happy to have you. We got the Alison Pregler stuff in there, bringing people in. Deep Space Nine's a popular property, and I'm not at all surprised that we're bringing these guys in. If you like good Star Trek, you're here for Deep Space Nine. Enterprise wasn't your thing, neither was Voyager, but you like the jokes. Go back, check out the years worth of stuff we've done.
There's so much lore to unpack and understand in regards to our inside jokes, certainly, and that's worth exploring. Plenty of stories, probably some of the funniest you'll ever hear in regards to raising children from Peter. Always a delight.
What
comments on YouTube of people, getting to experience that bit by bit.
Yeah, shit by shit. Lots of
very poop oriented. Yeah,
that's our brand. That's our vibe. Lots of good stuff back there, but lots of good stuff ahead of us. And
why don't we spoil all of that initiative we've made with people who like DS9 watching and instead do something else? What did we watch this week?
Hey, chronologically Starfleet appropriate, or sorry, Star date appropriate. Season 6, episode 16 of Next Generation, Birthright, Part 1. First aired February 22nd, 1993, written by Bran Braga, directed by Rick Colby. In-universe date is 46578.4.
So we weren't kidding. We decided we actually were going to review this episode of TNG because, chronologically speaking, during season 1 of Deep Space Nine, this is the next thing that happens on the station. And a decent amount of the episode actually does take place while they're at DS9 or on DS9. It's not totally a gimmick. This
is a special episode because I had to watch this episode on your birthday. And as I understand it, Move Along Home is not one of the best Deep Space Nine episodes. So what a great way to celebrate by not watching that episode instead of watching some great TNG.
It was really nice to not watch the worst DS9 episode on my birthday. So it was a lovely break from what otherwise could be and unfortunately will be in the not too distant future.
Yeesh.
But yeah, this is a fun episode to watch in the lens of, yeah, Deep Space Nine is a place where other adventures would happen. People show up there, they kind of do their thing. The DS9 cast wouldn't necessarily be there. It's a big space station. Like it's a space Wawa. Like people are coming in and out, and they're topping their tank off and they're leaving. Maybe
I love
talking to a
Picard's
shady
intro.
information broker.
I love Picard's intro to this. We are here at Station Deep Space Nine. Like, come on, bro. Get the station out of here, asshole.
And it's not, and they've been here quite a bit, this season. This is their second visit, really. They were here for the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
So they're already back trying to help, Bajor rebuild, which makes a lot of sense. That's Picard's major interest here, which he directly expressed to Sisko in the opening. So the idea that the Enterprise is back to continue the mission that we know they had from DS9's premiere. We're here to help the Bajorans get their act together so they can join the Federation. Well, that makes a lot of sense. That's great continuity, and it's not even in the same show.
What a shame that Colin Meaney wasn't around to actually be able to record on this. To give us some nice reconnect. Like, that's the big miss here, is that you don't get Geordi and O'Brien able to talk. But if he was around, like, oh my gosh, guys, welcome. You're not going to believe it. You just missed Q. We had Lursula and Bator here. Like, I used to think the galaxy was a big place, but it turns out there's only like 17 people in the whole fucking place. Bosh. She was around.
Don't tell the captain and his ex-girlfriend was here. And it was bad. There was a MacGuffin. The place almost blew up. Apparently, I was visiting my grandmother. I wasn't here.
Yeah, my mother-in-law, my 100. How great if Geordi would have rolled up on O'Brien, like, O'Brien, these replicators taste terrible. Boom, right in the mouth.
Shut up about the replicators. Oh, Geordi?
Fuck it.
Sorry,
Fuck
dude.
You. How dare you dump me off here? My wife hates it. I'm fighting all the time. This new guy is a lunatic asshole. I almost got sucked into a space butthole.
I decided that taking an assignment on the border of the people whom I have murdered most in the galaxy may not have been good for my PTSD. Can I come back to the Enterprise PLC?
When am I going to get the Cardassian episode where someone finally wanders across a wanted poster for the biggest murderer the Cardassians ever faced, and they look like, is that grease monkey over there pulling snot out of the replicator? Dude, this guy's like Cardassian's most wanted.
Like,
do you know how many episodes?
That's the most deadly human.
Do you know how many episodes of Unsolved Mysteries were levied at this guy's feet for mass killings, boogeyman shit, rigging?
Cardassian Robert Stack talked about it all the time.
If anybody can draw out there,
Cardassian Robert Stack and Unsolved Mysteries of DS9. We're talking about the Irish murder machine of humanity.
All Cardassian soldiers' faces had been cut off, and the customary calling card of a bowl of haggis left behind. And you're telling me that guy is a janitor at that fucking Bajoran truck stop, and we could just go and gank him?
You won't actually be terribly disappointed.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He hates his life. His wife is a real. Listen, it's dysfunctional, and this is one of those situations where, like, life is worse than death. So just leave him alone.
Free him from his marriage. Free him from obligations to the mortal coil.
He went on a shooting spree and almost went off with Trock or whatever that guy's name was.
It's like, ooh, I could just be a fugitive and murder people until I die. Yeah. Nah, I have a kid. See you, buddy.
Strong motivations. That's good writing.
I'll pull you through. So, we're on DS9. We get the DS9 opening followed by the TNG opening. It's a nice little medley. And we get the only official HD shots of Deep Space Nine because of the TNG Blu-rays. So they remodeled the exterior shots of DS9 for these shots, and it looks great.
Trickle down definitions. It's great. Again, watching these TNG episodes and thinking about what the uniforms look like in remastered footage versus raw high def that we saw in These Are the Voyages, still looking pretty good. I know the shiny badness that's waiting if these were true high def captures, but all this looks great, and it's nice to be back there, especially with the grainy stuff we've been watching in regular Deep Space Nine. So, real quick, just nerd stuff. When the Galaxy class is docked, are one of those pylons like touching the hatch by the photon torpedo launcher, or is it just assumed everybody's teleporting on and off, transporting?
I mean, it does look like it is making a physical docking connection somewhere in the star drive section there. I don't know if it's where the torpedo tubes are.
Well, that's where the main. That's where the main like connection is for port access or whatever. So
okay, that makes sense then.
Cool. I'd like to see at some point during the Dominion Wars, maybe they have like 2 Galaxy classes like upside down, so they're both belly
like
faced.
Show the station even busier and show it using 3-dimensional space.
Yeah, neat stuff they can do. We'll see if they do it or not.
Among the neat stuff on Deep Space Nine is Beverly Crusher's holosuite program, which sounds like a very nice spa day she's sharing with Jean-Luc. And Picard doesn't appear like he wants to go, talk to Sisko. Instead, he's going to talk to Bajoran bureaucrats about water, which is probably a better bet for him not getting punched.
What is the difference between holodecks and holosuites? Why would Beverly be that excited about something at a truck stop when she's got the best technology the Federation can produce?
So a holosuite is in fact less sophisticated than a holodeck because it's more limited in how many people can be in it. It's smaller. However, Quark's holosuites are not Federation holo technology, and therefore he has illicit or otherwise inaccessible holo programs that you can do there that you can't do other places.
I mean, I can understand like, hey, I've got proprietary software and really good DRM so people aren't stealing my shows here. And that would be great for like super kinky Tom Paris stuff before Tom Paris really has a chance to blossom as an emerging holo author. But
there are multiple direct references to the fact that the holosuites are popular because Quark has a large selection of fucking programs. That is not something that you can typically get on a starship.
Fair enough.
Not a starship. The thing that you think is actually said.
Listen, I just watched him try to negotiate contractual sex with his Dabo girl. So everything's on the table with this guy, clearly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. There's probably stuff on the Deep Space Nine holosuites that you're not going to find on a Federation starship in the Alpha Quadrant.
Correct. So, Delta Quadrant, different story. He was getting an adventure on fun.
Mm-hmm.
So they go off to have their side quests for the episode. They're not really in it. In fact, Riker's not really in it much either. This is definitely a Worf, Data, Geordi jam here this week. And we start with Worf and Geordi actually in the Replimat near the, what would you call it? The
voyeur vent.
The voyeur vent. Very near the
voyeur
vent. And they're having some pasta that Geordi finds disgusting, but Worf finds delicious.
He says it tastes like liquid polymer.
Tasteless, chewy, kind of feels like it's plasticky. Coming out wrong.
I'm just thinking, is this Replimat like 3D printing food? Which I guess is what you said, that they were protein sequencing off Enterprise, right?
Correct. Well, so, we know the Cardassian technology is more primitive, so the idea that its replicators can't nail Italian cuisine quite yet makes a lot of sense, right? It's
sure.
Whatever the intricate sort of crafting of the matter necessary came out feeling like, you can see how you can make it taste like that, right? The cream sauce came out a little bland, and it just kind of feels like I'm eating plastic. Sure. Creamy plastic. Yeah, I get it. But as Worf eats his disgusting pasta and is enjoying it, a weird-looking alien lurks upon him and stares at him. Nothing happens yet.
Well, let's call this alien what he is, Mr. Ballsack. There's been
And
some real ballsack looking aliens in the past, but this dude, right down to the seam running down the middle of his face, this guy is a ballsack mole rat of the ages here. And I was very surprised to see who they had in it.
oh yes, so uh, if you're going to go get a guest actor to play your weird alien race, I guess your best option amongst the TNG alumni is always going to be James Cromwell, right? Like, this guy's gonna get an Oscar, so maybe we should continue to use him for our alien bit parts while we can.
If you've got James, now this might have been post LA Confidential. When was LA Confidential?
That's a good question. I don't think it is, right? 93. So I think LA
97.
Confidential. Yeah. I think he's 5. Yeah. I was going to say, this is definitely pre Babe. This is definitely, obviously, pre First Contact.
First Contact. As
but
evidenced by the ugly fucking purple turtlenecks. But this guy's a big deal and will go on to be a big deal. And to think you're taking acting talent like this and encasing him in a scrotum mask is just bonkers to me.
But he also, because he's a good actor, makes it work. Like his body language of kind of seeming sort of twisted that he
Sure.
did with it, it just helped. It helped this guy seem shady and untrustworthy and weird, an alien.
Excellent body language with his fingering, his lean fingering, very engaging.
Right. And there's no book on this, right? This is an alien race that showed up like a couple times before, the Uridians.
Uridians?
And yeah, so what he's got to figure out what this guy's like, right? Like I need to inhabit this role, and that means I need to come up with a backstory essentially in my own head. What is this guy like? How does he hold himself? What's his story? How is he approaching this conversation, knowing, what he knows about the person he's come to talk to? What is ultimately his goal, which he may or may not know at that point. And you just get summoned in to figure this out on relatively short notice for not much pay. That's what these Trek guest actors have to do. And they do. And the ones who are great at it, they keep coming back for a reason. And
that's a great point. Like, yeah, you're not just talking about remembering the lines. It's fleshing these ridiculous characters out that only exist for 45 minutes in TV history before they are discarded forever.
And this episode was a reminder, by the way, of how good this show, TNG, really was, in that everyone takes very seriously what they're doing with this material, which I didn't always get that impression watching Enterprise, certainly. And
how could you? I mean, when you're dealing with season 1 and season 2, I'm surprised that those guys weren't just fucking standing there looking at the camera with a very clear, like, this sucks and I know it look on their face.
But thinking in this episode in particular, Worf talking to Troy, Worf talking to Data, Data talking to Picard, all of
Geordi.
Like all of these scenes are them very taking seriously this concept, which is ridiculous on its face. Like Star Trek's ridiculous. This episode's premise is pretty ridiculous. And but yet these actors are summoning forth, like, no, I'm treating this deadly serious. Like, this is a real thing that's happening. This dialogue I'm having with you, like, we're real people, and this is a real conundrum we're trying to solve, and you feel it. And I really appreciated it.
I bring up Geordi here. I love the idea of the best of the Federation showing up at the JV club.
Yeah.
And, all the stuff that Q was talking about a couple episodes, just highlighting, like, the Deep Space Nine guys are not bad and they're not dumb, but they're not the best. And they're also not by the book, as we've found. And you've got the squeaky clean Federation flagship docked here. Like, I legit would have liked to see Geordi kind of put the screws to O'Brien on some of this stuff. People interacting with Dex. It's loosey goosey from what we've seen so far, and see that kind of contrast there. And it starts to happen right about this point. You've got Data on the bridge. There's a power fluctuation down in sickbay. Bev's off fucking Space Ghost holodeck programs or whatever is going on with this. Whatever this cloud carrying her off into ecstasy is realistically supposed to be. So then Riker's like, well, why don't you go down there and figure it out, because we don't have security on the Enterprise anymore.
Worf's
And
not here at the moment. He's the only one.
well, and that makes sense too, because normally if there's going to be someone who stands there and gets shot with electricity, 9 times out of 10 it's Worf.
Okay, we'll get to that. All right. There's so much to unpack about those choices that we've made fun of Voyager a lot about, but clearly they did not invent.
No, yeah, Worf is the number one recipient of lightning bolt shocks, usually out of consoles. And he shows up, and there's Julian Bashir with what looks like a Half-Life 1 Gauss gun laying on the table. And he's like, oh, hey, even though I'm a Federation scientist, even though I'm Starfleet clearance, it just doesn't occur to me to like do anything by the book whatsoever. So I've taken this piece of hoopty gamma quadrant space trash and I've hooked it up to your shit. Let's see what we can do. Dude,
So
you're getting so many LimeWire viruses right now.
just throw the whole hard drive into the trash. Just like not salvageable. Move on.
My computer on Deep Space Nine wasn't good enough to run LimeWire, but this Galaxy class one.
It reminds me of some IRL issues I had in 2001 when I was in my first year in college. That I, in fact, did not have a computer that was good enough to really handle LimeWire, and there was a bank.
Those
of computers.
viruses were intensive.
There was a bank of computers down in our dorm's quote unquote computer lab that no one ever used, but were good enough and had no protection on them whatsoever for what you could access. So yeah, I set that up as my LimeWire like server, and I used it to like basically make first contact with all the viruses. Put them on a USB drive.
It's the dorm laundromat. That's all.
Yeah, it was the dorm laundromat. You're absolutely right. That is a correct description. But this role, this was not supposed to be Bashir. This was supposed to be Dax. And when you think about it, it really should have been, because Dax is the character that would have probably just shown up and started doing shit, right? Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense that Julian Bashir didn't ask. He's a newbie, and he's arrogant about his medical skills, but nothing we've heard about him is like that. He's not a rule follower. He's not like
or that
ask for permission
into like space junk hardware.
Yeah, I just found a thing and I wanted to see if it worked.
Yeah, they dragged us back from a space garage sale over in the other quadrant over there, and here we go. I've hooked it up. Yeah, this would totally fit Dax's MO, and I guess she was busy filming Move Along Home or whatever.
Unfortunately, yes.
Again, man, I think this is a real big, nice crossover opportunity, especially if you're trying to seed eyeballs onto Deep Space Nine. Like, why not have your 90s hottie on there?
Yeah, and it was written for her. It makes so much more sense if it was her, because she would be the most emotionally intelligent person from DS9 to talk to Data about a weird experience that he had, particularly one that seems to be a little metaphysical, being that she's a joined trill.
Now, all that said, I still think Julian works well in all of this, and I do genuinely enjoy his banter with Data on he's the best, second best choice, because he's the one that can be the most interested in what's going on with Data. And this reminds me of something you brought up last week that we didn't really get to explore, or maybe a few weeks ago. You're fully spoiled on that Julian Bashir is an augment. You mentioned that. It's clear that they probably hadn't decided on that character trait early on. At least in my opinion. They had a more Wonder Kid kind of idea with him, and I think they came up with the idea that he was augmented as a way to give him something more interesting that still fit with his being super talented, right? Yes.
And it's sometimes like I can see where the concept fits early on with early Julian Bashir, particularly as he like talks about the fact that he wasn't valedictorian and he's kind of upset about it. And it was like that big issue that comes up again, by the way, or that he's, super arrogant about how he's an amazing healer and Kira wants to fucking test that theory by trying to choke him to death. Those things kind of fit into that, but this is like, he's kind of a little bit more, I'm I'm just out here. I want to write papers and I want to like ask questions about things. And it's more the new kid Bashir that they eventually end up discarding, which I get it. It's not the more interesting thing to do with him. So, but
It's also kind of silly too. Like, you're super smart. There is one android in all of the Federation.
you
You're telling
don't
me
already
this
know who
guy's
he is.
You're
Yeah.
telling me this guy doesn't have his own chapter in some fucking grade school book by now? Also, how many times has he helped save the world? Like, oh, hello, guy from the Enterprise that is Lieutenant Commander with black slick back hair and
Gold eyes and
gold.
robot skin.
Yes, and can't speak in contractions. What did you say your name was? Oh dear. You,
If B'Elanna Torres knows who Data is, Julian Bashir should know who
yeah,
Data is.
drop out, fucking hot rod, greaser, Balana. Yeah, Julian. Maybe he's just playing coy. Where's Garrick in this episode? Why isn't he making passes at Data? What the fuck?
It would have been so much better if it was Garrick who broke in.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Fully Functional himself.
So I loved Bashir's interest in Data's complexity at being a facsimile of humanity. His pulse, the fact he breathes, the fact that he has a circulatory system, that he's an incredibly Data really is the most complex machine ever to exist, right? Like unbelievable artistic talent in his creation.
And that's, what we've talked about, the EMH versus Data. The EMH is more capable, but the EMH is also like a box on the wall that is the size of a refrigerator full of processing power tapped into the ship's main, like not a free walking agent able to determine their own destiny. The part of that conversation, of course, that's missing is Bashir saying, you can grow hair, you've got a pulse, you breathe in and out, you've got all these human features. Why would your designer give you fucking gold skin? Like, you're so close to just being human. Why does the dirty cheating mom from 2 episodes ago, what was her name, Julia Traynor?
Oh yeah, she did play the mom that was the one that banged Dax. I forgot.
Like, why does she get the good skin, but you get this fucking this tinfoil that you're rocking here? Like, what's up?
I think there's an answer to that you could suppose. There's an answer to that is suggested in the material. I don't think it's a reach, and that is Dr. Soong intended for Data and Lore and Soong type androids to be something separate from humanity, but also to become more human, to bridge the gap between biological life and artificial intelligence. And by bridging the gap, by making her Data very human in many ways, but still distinctly separate from it as a step, does make a degree of sense in terms of the philosophy of his creation. Whereas
and that's what ties
truly his mother was recreated as an android specifically to appear as human as possible. That was the intention of her creation.
She was a lie.
Yeah, she was a comforting lie for someone's existence to be able to continue.
Everything you just said really just dovetails into what Picard says later on, which is you are a nation of one, basically. You are a
culture of a single being. Yeah.
So you are human adjacent. And that was kind of my my gripe with that scene was like, oh, Data's looking all over the place for, insights into these dreams he's having. The only thing you should be considering is humanity's insights, because Soong was a human. Where are you going with this? You're your own thing, but it makes sense. Again, it would have been nice to have that on screen in dialogue, but if you're sitting there doing a podcast 20 years later, picking it apart over the course of 10 minutes, then it's right there. It's not a reach. Anybody could have arrived there.
Yeah. I feel like it's there, right, to be taken. And I don't think this is a unique take. But this does remind me of something that we've talked about, and this is our maybe sole opportunity so far in doing the show for as many years as we did to tie it directly into an episode and for it to be relevant. So in case you've never heard our other episodes where we've made mention of this fact, Peter and I are very much of the school of thought that Data always had emotions the entire time. That the emotion chip did not grant Data emotions. The emotion chip allowed Data to create finer tuned, more uh,
Vivid.
vivid emotions than what he was using that was much more dampened and the gain turned down. And I think this episode is a clear example of the fact that Data, in fact, does have emotions, and he does not recognize them as such because the game is turned down.
I mean, if he's got DLC dreams built in, then absolutely he's got the ability for emotions. Soong made him fully functional and put artificial limits in where at certain stretch goals being met or achievements unlocked, new aspects should be opening up. It happened with the dreams, and I think that lends all the credence to the idea that the emotions were there and they were just waiting for the right time to increase. In the case of the chip, that gate was going to be soon handing it to him, but yeah, it's all there. You're dealing with a human.
And we know that he did it this way because Lore was a disaster, and Lore was a disaster because he was overwhelmed by his emotions and soon learned his lesson. I've got to turn these way down. But they have to be present because if Data doesn't have emotions, then he doesn't have the ambition to join Starfleet, right? Or the desire to do anything with his existence. But he does. He's driven. He has purpose. And you don't have those things unless you have some kind of emotional driver um, pushing you in that direction. That's why he has ethics. It's why he has morality. It's not just merely programming. That's his excuse, right? So Data has emotions. This has always been our thesis, and this is a great episode that I think demonstrates that in a subtle but clear way.
Speaking of being pushed, Worf certainly has some of his buttons get pushed here. Pretty.
This guy is named Jaglom Shrek, but since he looks the way he looks, I think Jagoff is just a perfectly way of shortcutting that. So Jagoff, Cromwell goes over to Worf and says, "Hey, are you Worf?" And he's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Are you Worf?"
I'm trying to eat my melted glue sticks over here, man. Fuck off.
He goes, "Are you Worf, son of Moog?" And he puts his fork down. Like, what is this gonna be about? All right,
this better not be about my Batleth insurance.
You've invoked
I'm contacting you about the insurance plan on your Batleth.
Your extended warranty.
Hey, yeah, extended warranty. He goes, "Hey, I see you're trying to eat your dinner here. Let me start talking about your dad," which is a real sore spot for Worf these days. He's been called to the mat with these Duras fools trying to drag his family's name through the mud. Everything's kind of settled, I believe, at this point, right?
It is.
He's, his Chadich had his back. He's back in action. His house has been undisbarred, whatever. And here's this guy saying, "I got info on your dad, and he is not dead. And he's chilling out in a prison camp somewhere."
Jagoff, the button pusher, says, "I know he's alive. I know that he has been held prisoner at a Romulan prison camp. I want to sell you that information." And Worf, as he will do multiple times to Jagoff over the course of this episode, decides to respond to this information with violence. Now,
yes,
right now,
security officer Worf off the Enterprise. On the Enterprise, very by the book, very does not threaten people with murder. But man, you get Worf off that fucking Enterprise, people are getting cut with knives, dangled over shark tanks, threats galore. I mean, ever since he just straight up axed Duras, I feel like if Picard was smart, he would just confine Worf to the Enterprise to really just spare himself a lot of paperwork.
Lieutenant, I've noticed you only follow rules when you're here, so you're just never going to leave. Why do you say that, sir? Lieutenant, you beamed on to a heavy cruiser of Klingon origin containing one of their most powerful political figures and challenged him to a duel to the death, which he accepted, and then you killed him.
That might be the only duel to the death in the history of Starfleet where someone actually legit died. He didn't pull the Shran, I'm gonna cut your antenna off, right? Like, just
No,
dead.
you fucking killed him. You stuck a fucking batleth in his chest. And Starfleet was cool with it because he's an asshole, but I noticed.
Man, give me the episode where post Voyager, the Klingons have a real beef and really look down on the Federation for the post mortem revival techniques. And that could have been Worf's rebuttal, like, hey, they could have brought him back. Now,
They
Worf,
chose
they
not to.
frowned on it. Yeah. That carries the death penalty, not only for the person revived, but for the doctor administering the revival technique.
So Worf threatens the guy because Klingon tradition for warriors is that being captured is a fate far worse than death. And it would be a shame for him and Alexander if his father was actually alive. Yeah.
Who?
Evidently, Worf has a son. He does occasionally still show up, I think, at this point in TNG.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, this is after the Fistful of Data's episode.
Move.
Well, I think that's important because Worf comes back to the Enterprise. He's filled with bitch milk, so he's like yelling at his subordinates, yelling at Will. He decides to go fuck off and do angry Klingon Tai Chi.
Love the intro on that scene. It's his very homoerotic naked wrestling statue.
Yes.
And him just grunting, moaning, and groaning off camera somewhere. And you're like, is this how he's getting through this trauma? Is just a little bit of me time? Oh no, okay. He's got his crinkly old napkin kung fu outfit on. Going through some Klingon Tai Chi. And I
breaks a table as one does on the Enterprise.
Who in the Galaxy class program loaded the Replimat with table options?
Yeah, like why all the glass tables, guys? Why that? Why is that the look?
I really want to talk about this. Between 10 forward, which is just littered with glass tables waiting for people to get thrown through them.
Absolutely.
They're in people's quarters, especially the violent ones like Worf. And you know what else there is on these Galaxy class ships? There's carpeting.
Yes, you're right.
And I'll tell you what, getting glass out of carpeting, real fucking dangerous.
Yeah, like it you have to be extremely careful with it too, because you can't let it stay there. You can't let it get into the fibers. Someone's going to cut their fucking foot on it.
Someone at Starfleet Engineering was like, you know what? These in-console explosive devices that we've littered all over the place.
Universe people that put the explosives in there. They thought of this too.
That's good for killing people, but we need to think smaller. We need to really just make as much of this ship hell as possible. Let's make sure there's as much glass as we can in the carpeting. So people are just dealing with
carpeting. It's shitty carpeting. So you have to clean it up and you have to get into the little nooks and crannies, but it's not even like it's good. It's not even like you like it.
Maybe they pushed for shag initially and like someone above them was just like, no, this is too far. We can't have shag carpeting. So he breaks this innocent bystander table and then Troy shows up with her sass meter set up to 10. This isn't the way she talks to Barclay. I like how Dr. Troy, it's a different angle for every customer.
Well, I mean, this is after Fistful of Datas when I think we've entered into the writers are actually specifically putting Troy and Worf together in a fashion that puts them beyond mere colleagues, you know? They're getting comfortable with each other. Troy's got a very close relationship with Alexander. She's interested in Worf, as we know. And so she's in there and she's kind of like flying casual, right? Like, hey, bud, the fuck is going on? Right? Like, I'm not scared of you, obviously. You've got problems, obviously. You just yelled at Will for no reason. So why don't you tell me what's going on?
Poor Ensign Lopez, you're over there chewing him out, and he's like, well, listen, this is the flagship. This isn't loosey-goosey Deep Space Nine where you can get away with being a sloppy officer. And then she's like, speaking of which, I hear you over there threatening people's lives over the fucking promenade bridge. Bro, let's talk about the table after we talk about you openly threatening to murder people. The first time.
It's a nice reminder that late Troy is actually pretty good, right? Like, put her in that uniform. Troy. Uniform Troy is good Troy, and this is the right use of her character. She's here as both a confidant but also a professional. Like, you're an officer on this vessel and you've clearly got an issue and you need to talk to me about it because you have to. You've got to get over what's going on. So he opens up
Side
a little
note,
bit.
speaking of opening up, this dude he's not lieutenant commander, he's a lieutenant though, right?
Correct.
I just noticed, like, he doesn't get windows.
No.
This guy's living in what essentially looks like a fucking U-Haul self-storage shed.
He has an interior room. He does.
And there is a lot of windows on the saucer section. You're telling me the fucking, what, number 5 on the ship can't get a fucking window? I would have liked dialogue at some point. This, like, Worf, why haven't you moved out of this closet yet? And like him to have some, well,
It's
it's
ensign's
safer.
quarters. Why are you here?
If there's a depressurization event, I have a better survival rate, so I can get to the bridge and shoot the guns and kill people if I'm here. Like, cool. But yeah, it's definitely a U-Haul self-storage shed. I understand why he's as grumpy as he is.
Even Tuvok has windows. My God. He opens up. He talks about as a potential huge dishonor. He clearly wants to assume his father's dead because he doesn't want to have to reopen all of this Klingon bullshit that he just got done finally dealing with, in the prior season. And Troy, suggests to him, like, you're going to have to deal with this. You don't really have a choice. If your father is alive or something's going on with that, like, we're going to have to talk about this later, but leaves him to it. And that's when we cut back to engineering. So Peter,
I think we might be going the same place.
I think so.
I want to jump at the way back machine.
Yeah.
There were a number of times that I think we very fairly panned the shit out of B'Elanna and Paris, and Kim and 7 and 9 for just flying around and finding shit floating around in space and going, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's take this to the heart of the ship.
The very heart.
Let's take this android real doll fuckbot or
this weird
board.
Technological gizmo, whatever it is, from a foreign part of the galaxy that we've never encountered. Yep.
What's that? You're turning into a mutant murderer? Cool. Let's hook you up to the warp core. And I thought that was like,
are you a weird robot we found? Hook you up to the warp core.
Are you a missile?
Yeah.
With an AI?
Core. Get in the warp. Get in, boys. The water's fine.
Cool. Are you just a fucking tub full of nuclear waste? So here's this piece of shit that someone bought at a flea market. He's brought it in, and they've got it right in front of the dilithium chamber with an extension cord going in there. And they're like, cool, ready to test this thing?
And then Data goes, hold on a second. I know we have this thing plugged into the warp core, this thing from the Gamma Quadrant that we don't know what it does, and we're not sure what's going to happen when we turn it on and put power in it. We're hoping this power cable works, but maybe it blows it up, maybe it doesn't. Who knows? But it is vaguely shaped like a gun, and I could be standing right in front of where the barrel would be if I just moved to right here. Yes, this is where I will use my tricorder from. Please proceed, Jordy.
And thankfully he does. Because if Data was not there, there was an extra all the way back that would have ate some real shit. And I think when he got zapped by this fucking thing, it would not have been a gentle nudge off into dreamland.
So, sure enough, the gun-shaped thing, when powered, blows a lightning strike directly into Data's stomach.
It's basically a proton pack neutrino wand. So he gets ghost busted.
And he collapses onto the ground, and he has what we will later find out is his first dream sequence. He's wandering through the hallways. He encounters Dr. Soong with like a hammer and tongs on an anvil, pounding something, and he smiles, and that's when Geordi manages to awaken him back to consciousness. He doesn't understand.
Does Geordi have to file an incident report?
Oh no,
does
Picard? Absolutely. Are you
does
kidding
Picard
me?
have to sit there and say, "You did what with this piece of space trash and my warp core"?
So you mean to tell me some rando from Deep Space Nine came on the ship, just decided I'm hanging out here, decides to plug shit into my computer because the fucking Dell laptops that we, gave them that were 5 years old and dropped them off aren't good at doing science. So they're just trying to use our shit. And you're like, hold on. Let's go down to the explosive core of my magnificent space vessel and plug in this garbage. And then you manage to get yourself shot with electricity and maybe you had a dream.
Geordi, Data, what if this guy came over here because he knew this might happen and he didn't want to fuck up his stuff? So he got you two naive ass motherfuckers to hook it up to our stuff. So if it fucked up, it was breaking my ship instead of him getting his pretentious ass beat by Cisco.
Hey, Sherlock Watson, have you guys maybe noticed that me and the fucking guy in charge of this gas station don't get along real well? Maybe you should be a bit more suspicious of his dudes when they show up and fuck my ship up. Like, have you thought of this?
Here's the scene that's missing. It's Dax. Data goes to Geordi, let's hook this to the warp core. Geordi going, absolutely not. And then Dax bats her eyelashes at him and he goes, okay, well, you know what? For science.
Oh God, that would have worked so hard if this was Dax. Like he was like, I don't know about this. And he just like puts her hand on his chest and be like, Geordi, it would mean a lot to me if you could help. And he's just defenseless. Mm-hmm. He just gives up immediately. And like, Data just like raises his eyebrows at that, like, oh, that worked, huh? That's interesting. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that worked. I saw that work. That's it. That's all that needs to happen there. And then she goes right back to asking Data questions about who he is and what he's made of, because that's what she finds interesting. Certainly
and that's
not
why
Geordi.
They didn't erect a force field or anything, is because she's over there making small talk about his fucking, if he can grow his pubes or not.
Exactly.
So he has his dream sequence. There's his dad. Whatever. He starts going on a mini self-discovery quest. Does he talk to Worf or Picard first?
He talks to Worf first and then Picard, because he has to work through what did I experience, right? And it's, Geordi trying to diagnose it from a technical perspective and coming up with nothing. He should not have had an experience of visions and, audio things and visual things when his system was shut down. But that just means like his consciousness is a thing that goes beyond his technical capacity.
Interesting.
Right? Like, that is what is being suggested by this, that he did not lose consciousness. That is what he says. He experienced things.
That's big implications.
Yeah. And
if he is fully powered down and he is having activity sans electricity, I mean, we've just basically said that somehow, despite all those transporter trips, he still has a soul.
I mean, he's art, right? That's what's said about Soong type androids. They are art. They are craftsmanship. He is something more than a mere machine and something more akin to human in form and in function and indeed in spirit. That's always been his character.
So he needs to start talking to people for advice. Luckily, there is a ship's counselor that is all sorts of ready to talk about dreams and interpretations and all of this psychoanalysis stuff. So he talks to security guy instead, who is currently building quite the reputation on Deep Space Nine for menacing, threatening, and terrorizing people.
Listen, he's got a reputation he has to build. It's only going to be a couple seasons before he's going to have a timeshare here. And
fair enough.
Second, they got to tie these two plots together somehow. So these two have to talk.
Yeah, this isn't Voyager, right? The A plot, B plot need to touch. It's so rare you can use Troy to do the psychology thing, and the fact they don't use her for the fucking clear she gets consulted zero on this. It could have been her best episode.
They decided to use her for the plot with Worf instead of
but she could have been both. Like, that's a job. You have two people you talk to. That's a day. This could have been Troy's day. I think
they wanted to give Patrick Stewart another scene though, and that's why they ultimately, instead of, because if you were gonna fit that scene in, that's where you would have done it. You would have had him go to Troy in her quarters and be like, I have questions. I've experienced these things, and she would give the same approximate advice, probably, that Picard did. But Picard literally has no other scenes in this entire show. It is the opening
Oh
and the scene
no.
with Data, and that is it. So,
Well,
you
here,
need to get your man on the screen.
and if you're gonna have him go and talk to Picard about his dreams, and Picard's already got the fucking computer open up with aqueducts, I think that'd have been a great time for Data to be like, oh yes, I know all about aqueducts. In fact, I've blown a couple up in my day, forcing colonists to relocate. Let me give you some tips on how to best lay out new aqueduct systems so you really reduce the capacity of terrorism.
You listen, and Bajorans need that.
I
Right?
know.
Like,
Listen, I
they're
know.
so
It's a
good
great.
at it.
If Bran would have bothered watching some other episodes through Star Trek, he could have had some great fallback material. So
So,
that's where Picard gives him the speech on, you're your own thing and you should look inward.
yeah. And the conversation he has with Worf actually works too. Because Data turns to him to say, like, I understand you've had a vision. You've had like this kind of spiritual experience. And he explains it and engages with Worf on this question, on very seriously talking about this kind of these esoteric matters that are probably uncomfortable for people of the 24th century to really consider, right? They're enlightened atheist space rationalists for the most part, yet they're the ones that are the more frequently having to encounter these philosophical concepts.
Not
Than
everybody has the luxury of having a dream warrior like Chakotay on board.
Indeed, right? Like Kuchimoya, one and all.
Get the hand vibrator out.
And it allows Worf to bridge the gap to the fact that he needs to explore whatever this lead is that could lead him to information about his father. He owes that to his own understanding of himself because he never knew his father. And
there's two things. One is he owes it to himself, and two, he had a fear that discovering that Moog was alive was going to invoke Klingon policy to shame the house. But in talking about the obligation of pursuing all information about a father in Klingon culture, like, it almost supersedes the risks of the repercussions if he is alive. Like, culture dictates if he's alive, but my culture also dictates that I must know everything about my father. And he talks himself into like, all right, I'm gonna go find that fucking space ball sack and we're gonna go on an adventure.
Only after I threaten him again. Like the
Absolutely.
second time he threatens him is the time he's dangling him off the freaking promenade.
Yeah.
Odo nowhere to be found at these times. Like just no security, no nothing. Just tons of witnesses, many witnesses. Like
maybe
a crowd.
maybe he's a painting on the wall, or he's one of the rungs of the railing. But because he has his warped sense of justice, he's just fine with it.
Yeah, he's like, you know what? I don't like this guy. I'm glad you're getting him off the station. Thank you. He's the one that gave him the info. He's like, yeah, he's got a warp ship. Go fucking go dangle his ass off a bridge until he says he'll take you.
I gotta go harass Quark about building code violations.
And we know they're boys from Picard season 3.
Eventually,
because,
yeah.
Yeah, like, they eventually do have a relationship, but anyway, Worf goes off with Ballsack Man, and Data goes to explore, what's going on with his mind more. He paints, he tries to interpret what's happening, but ultimately comes to the conclusion that the only way they can figure out what's going on is if they get, recreate the bolt of lightning. And he goes 3.162 gigawatts into, wherever it's going on in his subconscious. So they recreate the experiment. Bashir's still there, right? Like, I'm an eager helper. I'm getting paid to be in this one. Hooray!
Please give me culpability when we not only damage the warp core, but maybe kill a crew member. Make sure my name's on this report.
Crew member in all of Starfleet. An irreplaceable piece of, technical art. In
the guy who defeated the Borg.
A miracle of consciousness.
Yeah. Let's hit him with the Gauss gun. Come on.
And sure enough, when he does get hit by the Gauss gun, he goes back into his dream sequence and understands, yes, this is something that got set up by Soong for him to be able to start dreaming once he hit certain levels in his cognition, which he's cheating by using bolts of lightning, but he didn't really know that's what he was doing.
That's what it is. This piece of gamma quadrant technology, it's a game genie.
It is a game genie. You're right. Plug that thing. You know what? And those were such a pain in the ass to use in the NES era. It was
Oh,
because you had
I
to.
was straight NES on that.
Yeah, no, well, Genesis for me. Like I had an NES Game Genie, and it was such a pain to get the game seated on it because the Game Genie was the thing that went in first,
Yeah,
and it was like sticking out, and like my sister would walk by and would just knock the thing off, and would you spend all that time putting those fucking codes in.
yeah. Listen, you had to put the work in back in the day. There was none of this iPad nonsense. You had to fucking with the controller one at a time. Hard days, bit mining.
There's a
But
fantastic documentary on the creation of the Game Genie by the game historian. If you are into YouTube videos,
oh,
yeah, he did
really?
it. Yes, so I would strongly recommend that one.
Yes, I will watch that because I. So he goes back on his quest. He gets more. He gets into painting. He covers the room in painting. He's like dual wielding paintbrushes. My question is, what do you think happened to all the paintings that he created? Where are those right now? Did those get thrown away? Are those hanging up in someone's office?
God only knows. I would assume there probably a couple of them were in that sequence in Picard season 1 where he opens up his archive. He's got like all that random stuff from the Enterprise.
It's a
Because
bird
Data
wing.
died, right? Like someone took all of his things. Like the paintings are the sort of thing that
I'm
I think
talking in
Picard would.
real life. Where do you
Oh
think those went?
God, you mean the props? Jesus,
Yeah, yeah.
I bet some of those have been sold. I
They
bet you
had.
anything they have. Yeah,
I mean, there's some pretty cool shit in there.
probably for a
He
lot
goes,
less than you think.
oh yeah. I wonder if there's a replica art out there. I bet you some Spiner Femmes are proudly displaying their pieces.
Oh, no doubt.
Speaking of proudly displaying, Worf threatens this guy, goes, "No, motherfucker, you're taking me on your ship, and you're not getting paid until I come back." And this guy's like, "Okay, yeah. Like red flags all over the place. Worf's like, "We're going to leave, but first I got to go get my Archer style tactical neck.
It is. You're right. It's a Tactineck. Yes.
I haven't had a chance to wear this ever since the captain was abducted by Cardassians and
Yeah.
tortured.
This is straight from the chain of command. You're absolutely right.
I would like to see like people like Picard catching him leaving Enterprise wearing that thing and be like, fucking excuse me."
Lieutenant, I do believe you are stealing my look. Well, I have none
The
of that.
last I'm aware of what that is, and that is for doing dirty ass shit on the DL. What are you talking about fucking shore leave here for? While we're over here on the edge of the wilds? What's this I hear about you dangling people over a bridge? Shore leave approved.
He heads down to the surface. He starts to try and infiltrate whatever this compound is that he believes is a prison. And that is when you hit one of the more
Naked lady.
iconic TNG shots. And that is him seeing a young, buxom Klingon maiden taking a bath in a river. We already know who this person is. We have talked about this person at tremendous length. This is Jennifer Gotti, who is better known to us as Harry Kim's fucking girlfriend from Non Sequitur, the Cro-Magnon beauty herself, in what was her original debut.
She looks much better as a Klingon than she did as a human.
It hides her Cro-Magnonness.
Fucking non sequitur. I recoiled as you said those words. TNG is so good. I'm enjoying myself so much. How dare you invoke fucking Voyager trash on me?
I mean, that was a great episode for the Looney Tunes level of how bad Starfleet security is. Like undefeated material when it comes to that.
The closed window. I don't know. I'm sure there's some good Eastern saying about a window closed, but yeah, not only are they bad, but also the complete lack of privacy and arguably authoritarian rule over Earth when people are just beaming in to fucking arrest you with a 2-star rating. Like, come on. So Worf's back there peeping Tom in it because again, he's not on Enterprise, so he's there's no rules. Black Ops, he's got his tactical neck on. She's like, "Oh, hey, so-and-so, I see you over there." And then, "Oh, wait, no, you're some old dude wearing a fucking turtleneck spying on me." And he's like, "I'm here to rescue you." And she's like, "We don't need to be rescued."
And it's worth noting that this particular Klingon does look a little bit different than most Klingons we've seen. The whole forehead ridge area is a little differently designed, which I think is a purposeful tell of where the story ultimately goes in part 2. But she actually doesn't say anything about it. She decides, okay, I won't say that I just saw you. But then Worf solid snakes his way in there. And when he does, what should happen? But he decides to grab up a guy, older gentleman, friend of his father, finds out his dad did in fact get killed. So that's that. But unfortunately for Worf, other old people come in and they know the secret of Klingon martial arts, which is unlike for Starfleet martial arts, it's only women that get immobilized when you grab their arms. For Klingons, it's men too. It works on both.
Or so they thought, because they grab him by the arms and he looks down and he goes, "Do I look like 7 of 9? Do I look like DePaul?"
And then immediately, judo chops.
He goes Steven Seagal all over him. There's palm strikes up and down the wall. He roughhouses all these geriatrics. None of them are going to be able to hold a cup of McDonald's coffee in the morning. He's completely ruined
all around. Absolutely.
He has completely just obliterated the morning walkathon over at the mall, Seniors Walk Fest or whatever. And then Romulan Centurions show up with their shoulder pads and disruptors. And that's our climactic end to part 1.
I am sorry to inform everyone we will not be watching part 2 because it does not take place on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, I mean, that's
literally it. But yeah, this was a fun diversion, though. It was nice to see Deep Space Nine as a place the story was happening and that the story was facilitated by, because again, like Worf can't get approached anywhere else this way, but it happens at shady Space Casablanca. That makes sense. And, Bashir showing up with a piece of garbage, it would have been better if it was Dax to make the data plot work, but Bashir is the second best choice. It actually does work as a sort of side quest of DS9 things.
Now that the birthday blessings are over, move along home. Season 1, episode 10. I'm looking at the thumbnail here on Memory Alpha, and I don't know. There's a guy there that looks like the hillbilly from Office Space.
I was going to say, yeah, it does, doesn't it?
He's over there wishing that he could have enough gold pressed latinum to afford a 3-way. There's a lady holding a Hellraiser lament cube. A visiting delegation from the Gamma Quadrant turns 4 crew members into pieces for a bizarre game. Before we close this one out, I meant to mention this. I did read the Memory Alpha for this TNG episode. Did you, Joe?
Yeah, I did.
How absolutely appropriate that Ronald D. Moore suggested that Data having some kind of religious experience. Like, I feel like him offering on the set, like, what if we had a religion? Like, that was just what everybody hated him for. Like, hold on, Ron. Before you open your mouth.
Again with that shit. Again with the robot having a religious experience.
Just anybody. Yeah. Let me guess, Ron. Your contribution to this conversation is it should involve God, angels, or a religious experience.
Why don't you go make your own show? Maybe that's what you want to do, Ron. Maybe you want to have a show where it's all robots and religious experiences all the time. Yeah, there's definitely some foreshadowing. Unfortunately for us, Move Along Home is the consensus pick for worst episode of DS9. It just is. And it earns that reputation, and we will endure it together, sir. Everybody else better come ready for just a lot of jokes.
Yeah.
And we will see you next week.